Hello, Brendon. What, my dear, dear friend in
Hello,
Houston,
Viv Adcock.
Texas.
Hi.
Long time no see.
It has been a long time no see, hasn't it?
Physically, energetically is a totally different story
Well,
because
I
we're
get
willing
to,
to receive each other in a completely different way.
I know, but I miss the accent.
The English
See, now I'm even
audience.
saying I miss the accent, like you have an accent that I don't have.
Apparently. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 10-minute news and updates quickie. I'm not sure that Brendon and I are going to do this in 10 minutes, but hey, let's see where we go and what we can receive. So, Brendon, I really wanted to talk to you about what we first talked about was eluga, because the level of receiving that eluga invites people to is something completely beyond this reality. And I think a lot of people have this assumption that receiving is when we take something or when somebody gives us something, and that's inclusive of receiving, but it's also a tiny little portion. So I'm going to ask you to talk about what receiving is for you at eluga. And I'm using eluga because it's a long time dream, target, desire that Gary Douglas has had so strongly to introduce the place to the planet and to introduce the energies of the book The Place that he wrote for people to go and experience and immerse in and absorb and receive. And you've physically been to eluga. A lot of people watching this haven't yet been to eluga, but would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, and let me see if I can put any words to it. But so it's Elugar translated is the place. I remember when I first got that book. I think it was the first book that I got that I would walk around everywhere with that thing. It was my Bible, but it talks about what life and living can be, and also what we can have as the communion together, but also with ourselves, but also with the planet. And so in building this place, it's Elugar the resort, but you go there and it's not just Elugar the resort. It's such a acknowledgement of being. And it's the weirdest thing. Like you have, for me, in being there, because I've been going there, I think we've had the place for 8 or 9, 10 years that we've actually had the property there. So we were going there and setting tents up and doing cook-offs, and riding horses and doing all stuff before the resort was built. But it just has this way of showing you that you cannot hide from, which is interesting too, like, because with that sense of receiving, it can be kind of uncomfortable. Like when you're in a place where you don't get to hide, and it's weird because it's not like you're hiding anywhere, but you don't get to hide from everything that you are. And so for me, it's shown me a lot and continues to. And I'm lucky enough to be in Houston. I'm a 3.5 hour flight from there. So it's just, the place is amazing.
I heard Dane say recently, they recently did their first live event at eluga, actualized.
So
yeah. And it was called, I think from memory, it was called Creating a New, I'm not even going to try and remember, but it was Creating a New Reality.
The beginning of a new reality.
Yeah. And that title, oh my God, I'm getting goose pimples now, just because it does totally invite you to receive and be present with a very different reality where Dane did a live. I was on his 15-day reset, the real great reset, which is fantastic, folks. You can still buy that.
If you weren't on that, you need to get on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one morning he did a live from, actually he did an ESC as part of the Great Reset, and he turned the camera around so we could watch eluga. And the difference, just seeing it on a video screen, just receiving that energetic synthesis of communion with Dane, with the contribution of eluga. Here I am 12,000 kilometers away, changed so much molecularly, vibrationally, energetically in every aspect of my world. So, you know, when we talk about receiving, it's something that is undefinable, but it's very sensorial at the same time. And what you were just saying about hiding, Dane made a comment of, it's very difficult to separate at eluga. Can you speak a bit more to that?
Well, for someone like me, and I think, you know, see if you can relate to this if you're listening, I'd learned so many tactics with creating separation from myself, creating separation from anything that I'd decided I, you know, didn't want to receive from. And the way that we do that is by having judgment. Anywhere you have a judgment in your life is everywhere you won't receive anything that doesn't match it. So for me, and definitely more so recently in my journey, has been a lot more about confronting those things, and not confronting it as let me go up against it, but just the willingness to actually be present with what's going on. And, you know, so with being there, it's just kind of like, okay, here you are. And what if it's not what you think it is? You know, and that's been for me, like one of the things I've learned over the years is it never looks the way you think it's going to, you know. But like you said at the beginning, we have so many things about what receiving is. And the thing I love about Access is it begins with the bars. It begins with learning what actually receiving is, you know. And so, because I always had this thing was kind of a transactional universe where receiving was give and take. But it's like receiving's not that. Receiving's the willingness to be without judgment so that you can receive and actually be beyond judgment. And like, to put it into a practical example, like, you know, if you're going, wow, the sun is too hot, all you can receive is the heat from the sun. You don't receive the energy, and you'll notice that it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. Or if you've got the judgment that money's hard, money's difficult, then you'll notice that all you receive is more difficult, more hard. So receiving, we're all great at it. We're already receiving, but we tend to eliminate everything that we could receive for what we've decided we should receive. So that's been a different, you know, different journey with that.
Beautifully. I have to remember I'm interviewing you, because as I'm talking, I'm going into everything that you're speaking to and the energies that you're embodying when you're communicating. So, you know, for all the viewers watching this now live with us, welcome, and in the future. But there is this way of embodying an energy, and when you're willing to be present, you receive the energy, not just the words. And the energy, for me, it kind of seeps in and massages and softens and permeates my being to invite me to receive something that is undefinable, but still contributes beyond this reality, beyond words. So, yeah.
And that undefinable, I mean, we've all been conditioned and programmed into define your life so that you can control your life, so that you can predict your life, so that you can determine what's going to show up, how it's going to show up, which is what we've bought as receiving, really. I mean, a great example of my first kind of, whoa, I could have this, was meeting you. You know, and a lot of people don't know this, but I did the bars class, and then Gary Douglas was coming to Brisbane 5 days later. And I was like, how do I meet this man? You know, and the girl that was doing my bars class, she was like, well, you need a foundation class. And I was like, well, how do I do that? I got a full-time job. And I remember calling you and being like, I work all day. And you're like, okay, so let's start at 6 o'clock at night. And we did that. We did the foundation class from 6 until, I don't know, 10, midnight, whatever it was, 4 days in a row. And one of the things I recall from that, because that changed my life in ways that I still like look back on that and I'm like just blown away. One of the things I remember was you would ask me questions or things out of this manual, and I would say things and you'd be like, doesn't quite match the energy. And it was the first time that it wasn't like, that's not correct. Like, what are you talking about, you idiot? It was like, that doesn't match the energy. And I was like, you're right. Like, it actually doesn't. And, or you'd be like, yeah, I want to change this, but you don't actually want to change it. And that thing that you talked about with getting congruent with the energy is it's not until you're congruent with it that you can actually change it. So the other thing that receiving gives you is the ability to be present. So you can be present with that. And rather than being in judgment of yourself of, oh, I'm never going to change this, and all of that shit that we all tend to do, is being present with it and actually receiving you also.
Yeah, again, beautifully spoken. And that, I think, one of the things that you've mentioned it a couple of times that is really challenging until we have the tools, until we have the desire and we make the choice and the commitment to us, is receiving judgment. So when people judge us, because we are energetic beings, we sense that a lot of the times with our bodies, and it can hurt, quote unquote. You can retract from that, you can shut down, you can hide or withdraw. And yet the true freedom is just having a level of vulnerability to know that, I'm going to quote Dane because this just helps me with judgment whenever I receive it. He said, judgment's just like a really stinky fart. He said, it's really intense for the first 30 seconds or so, and then it's gone. And you don't go around thinking weeks later about that fart, do you? It's just really intense for the moment and it's gone. So what if, ladies and gentlemen, you'd allow yourself to make judgment as relevant as a stinky fart?
Yeah. Well, I remember something Gary said to me once, and because I always had a hard time with like judgment. I would do anything to avoid it. And I used to smoke cigarettes, right? And I was talking to Gary once, and I was like, oh man, like I go to the dentist and he's just such a judgmental asshole, and Gary's like, here's what you do, okay? Is before you go in there, smoke 2 cigarettes. And then when you lay down in the chair, just like blow it out. And I was horrified at that. I was like, I could never do that. I could never. And he was like, why are you making something that's a lie real to you? And I was just like, and I remember that because I was like, because that's all judgment is. It's an invention. It's a lie. Yet as soon as you align and agree with it or go into resistance and reaction to it, it now belongs to you too. And so I mean, my thing with that for people with getting out of judgment of yourself and having way less judgment in your life is find some ways to laugh at yourself. Find some humor in you. Like, rather than judge you, what if you went, oh my God, I'm so not right in this area of my life?
Yes, I've just realized how absolutely batshit crazy I am with relationships at the age of 57.
You're not the only one, honey.
But
you're in good company.
I think a few people on this live would probably have a bit of a chuckle about that. And that sense of humor is really important. It's one of the elementals, and it just lightens that compaction and that density up. So a line that I love is, what's funny about this that I'm not laughing at? What's funny about this that I can, giggle at right now? Because the moment you sense, you tap into that sense of humor and the lightness, it takes all the relevance and the significance of it. And that it is a muscle. Receiving is a muscle, and it's a choice that we have to make, and this, Gary always talks about, you've got to be willing to be in order to receive, and you've got to receive in order to be. And for many years, I'm like, what is he talking about? So, Brendon, you've received a lot of judgment over the years, especially the last few years. And I want to talk about your book in a second. I know we've gone way over 10 minutes, but I hope you're okay for time.
Oh, I'm good, and right. I knew getting on here with you, I was like, she's not going to keep this to 10 minutes. Who's she kidding?
I don't think they're going to sack me either for going over 10 minutes.
Blame me. Just be like, oh my God, that asshole just won't shut up.
So yeah, receiving judgment. So, with your journey, particularly in the last few years, where, you've made choices, and this is the thing, it's like there is never any wrong choice. Choice always creates awareness, and with that sense of awareness, you've got more choices. So, with the judgment that you've received, Brendon, how have you used that to become greater? How have you received that to actually I'm going to write a book. I'm going to facilitate some classes. I'm going to, you've risen from the ashes, so to speak. And, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then we'll talk about your book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could,
there's another hour.
What Viv's talking about is I've struggled my whole life with addiction. And it's also been one of the things that I've tried to keep hidden from myself and from everyone else. And in the last few years, it became very difficult to hide, but also I kept hiding it from myself. So into my journey with sobriety, it's been, the biggest thing has been getting out of judgment of myself, because there's nothing you can do about anybody else's judgments. And I know for me, the way to change my life, the way to change anything that I desire, including the world around me, the only place to start is with me. So I've been, this is where, one of the things that we say in Access is, what if your greatest wrongness is your greatest strongness? So for me, this would be it, addiction and addicted to alcohol. And now with my journey is, I see it as such a gift, and I use it as a gift, because for me, I wouldn't have looked at myself as honestly without it, and I knew that in order to be sober, in order to have sobriety as part of my life, it was like, okay, I'm going to actually have to have a look at some shit. I look at where I'm judging myself. I look at where I'm not being honest with myself. I look at where I'm doing projection and expectation of others. I look at where I am taking rather than looking at what am I not being that would allow me to receive. And so for me, it's an extreme version of what I think we can all relate to. I'm just a little extreme, so I do things like over the top. So in that, it's, and it's also, I'm looking forward to what I can share and contribute to the world with it.
Yeah. And that's, again, that hiding thing. Whenever we hide anything, we ourselves can't get really vulnerable with it. We've put so many lenses in place and so many, like you said, avoidance tactics or coping mechanisms. A lot of the time, it's not a wrongness, it's a coping mechanism to something that may not make logical sense to you. We do stuff that as a way of preserving ourselves and coping with life. This isn't a wrongness by any. So if you do have addictions, it's not a wrongness. Okay. Number one, there's something that, like you said, Brendon, there is a gift with that. If you're willing to take the judgment lenses off and start looking at, okay, so what's right about this? What gift is this? What greater reality could this invite me to if I was willing to receive it? And so you've just written an ebook. So is this available yet for viewers if they want to tap into it?
I've written an ebook, which is called The Misfits Guide to Money. Yeah, it's available. You can get it on Amazon, and it's great. It's got some awesome tools in there, money tools. But I'm actually working on another book at the moment, which I won't give away because I'm only in the beginnings of it. Kind of, it's all in my head, and we're working on it. But it's on addiction, but also, see, for me, I think we can all relate to having addictions in some form or another. I've got extreme addiction, which is alcohol, which I just can't drink. For me, at the end of the day, my body's allergic to it, and it does crazy shit to me. So it's like, okay, that is not happening. But that was one thing. In order to move beyond addiction, you have to be willing to look at what's underneath it, and get to all of that stuff, which is essentially what most of us are trying to get away from, which is kind of weird, is ourselves.
Yeah.
And everything that's true for you, because everything that's true for you might not be true for everybody else. So that willingness to be that different and that vulnerable with yourself can be kind of an interesting thing to look at. But one of the things I know about what it takes to go beyond addiction is creating a life that's true for you. So I'm looking forward to having that be, because that's one of the things that I saw. I've done a lot of AA stuff with getting sober, and which is great. I am so grateful for AA, and it's so great for getting you sober. But one thing it doesn't necessarily do is teach you how to create your life. And so I'd see so many people come in there and they'd get sober, and then if they're a seeker of the world or a humanoid, it's like they'll be like not keep like a year later or 2 years later or 5 years later, they'd be back doing the same thing that they were before because they haven't been creating their life. So this is where access is so just like nothing else on the planet, because it's about empowering you to know that because you're the only one that knows what's true for you, and that is what I'm looking for, like what I'm excited about with approaching it from a different angle.
That I just had a whole download of that, Brendon. It's like, I get these programs are brilliant to get people out of the problem and the pain, but what next? If they've been, and I took drugs when I was younger in my wild and crazy days, and I know that I was doing that because I was looking for an altered state of reality. I was looking for a different way of being and functioning that wasn't available. It was like, I'm looking at the menu, but the dish that I actually want isn't there, but we don't know that. So I saw that step that you're just talking about, that could be a massive contribution to anybody that's, stepping out of this, because it can consume their life. It becomes their life. So to let go of that.
It did me.
Yeah.
I almost used it to end my life on several occasions. So my point of view about myself basically now is, man, if I can't kill me, then nothing can. But it's like,
meme.
The thing with, the thing that we brushed on with judgment as well, where it's like, how do you receive judgment from others? Well, acknowledge that the only reason they're judging you is because they're not willing to look at them. Worry about you. If I could give you any piece of advice in like, how do I receive judgments from others, is receive you. And then judgment from others won't mean anything. It's just like, okay, judge me. I get that you've got your shit going on. And if you need to judge me to make yourself feel greater, go for it. Because I like myself so much that I also like you too. And if you've got that going on, you just go for it. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
And that for me was the key when I actually got to the place where I could begin to receive judgment. It was like, actually receiving this is giving me more of me, and not from a fake kind of pretense of arrogance of, I don't care. It was like, wow, thank you so much for judging me. Thank you so much. Because I can either choose to crumple and contract and believe that and let that judgment stop me, or I can just kind of open up and expand into it. And I visualize, if that's an easy way to describe it, I just let more of my being out amongst all of that judgment and dissipate it. It's like, let the sunshine in. Is it really, is it real? It will only be real if you make it so. And that I know the damage that I allowed to happen to my creation and my creative capacities and my ability to contribute was massively impacted. So to get beyond that judgment and to use it not from, fight or right or wrong or polarity, but just from receiving it, just melt and allow it to be an interesting point of view, because it is just an interesting point of view. It's somebody else's point of view about you. Is it true? Only if you make it so.
Yeah. So, and, if it doesn't make you any lighter, then why bother?
If it's heavy, it's never, ever, ever yours, people. Ever.
No, stinky fart time.
Brendon, thank you so much. It's been way over 10 minutes, but hey, look, what's time anyway? It's just
they can spank us later. It's all good.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, I know there were a few comments, but we were so engrossed. There's been some great comments.
I wasn't even looking at comments. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendon. And
thank you.
I look forward to giving you a hug in physical form one day, not in the too distant future. And
me too.
And I would love to hear more about your book. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a magical day. Bye.